Recording in progress.
Let's start with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Next up is Tim M., who will continue on the subject of how it works. There will be an Ask It basket during Tim's sessions. Please post questions and we will filter them up to the top table. Please welcome Tim.
Yay!
Good morning, everyone. Tim, alcoholic.
Hi, Tim.
Let me just get my stuff organised. There we go, Tim, alcoholic. Very good to see some people here this morning. And apologies for not observing the Oklahoma dress code for speakers. The speaker can be used either as an example or a warning. So if ever your sponsees say, well, you tell me to wear a suit and a tie at the podium and this bloke doesn't, well, that's the warning. This is what happens to you if you, this is what you become if you don't wear a suit and a tie. So if your sponsor has told you to wear a suit and a tie, your sponsor's right for you. There are little cultural differences in AA in different places. Things are largely the same, but there are little cultural differences. In London, there's one group where they wear a suit and a tie, and every other group thinks they're Scientologists or something. It's just no one understands it. So things are done slightly differently in different places. So apologies for being an out of towner here. We managed to get through one whole paragraph, or no, almost a whole paragraph yesterday. So let's see how far we get today. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. And my focus all through my drinking, I thought that my drinking was because of my mental condition. I thought it was because of my depression, my anxiety, all of the other things going on. There's a really interesting bit, and if you go to lots of meetings, you'll hear a lot of people describing the childhood and the emotions and all of those things as being the causes of the alcoholism. And fair enough, I don't know what other people's truth is, but for me, mine lines up with what it says here. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. So I would have told you that my drinking was because of, as I said, anxiety and depression. But if you look back, if you were to stand back from my drinking and look at the effect of the alcohol on me, it was immediately making the depression and the anxiety worse. The next morning, the anxiety of waking up in the wrong part of town with the wrong person next to you when you're already 2 hours late for work, it makes no sense of, well, I'll go and have another drink. Now, if it's the first time you've drunk, and you're doing it to treat the anxiety, and then the next morning the anxiety is off the scale, then you've now learned a lesson. You know when you go to a restaurant and you've never been to before and you get food poisoning, and you can't even eat the same flavoured food from somewhere else because the association between the thing that you did and the consequences is so severe, is so visceral, that you wouldn't even dream of doing it again. That mechanism is not there with me in alcohol. So I wasn't drinking because of any of those things. And the reason that's so great is I don't need to fix those things in order to stay sober. I didn't need to fix the depression or fix the anxiety to stay sober. I didn't need to be in a good emotional condition to be sober. I need to be in a good spiritual condition, which is really basically saying, I don't know, God does what's on the menu for today. What am I going to do today? And that is it. That's fit spiritual condition. Fit spiritual condition is not me feeling that the arms of Jesus are wrapped around me. There are days when that might be the case, but a really fit spiritual condition for me is when I'm not in charge of the entire world, where all I'm looking at is my immediate obligations, and that's it. I'm enjoying the ride as I'm going along. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. If you have decided, I'll come back to that in a minute. Our stories disclose in a general way. Now in London, most meetings are where someone comes to the front or sits at the front, and the chair or the secretary says, so this is our speaker, Sally's come along to share with us what it used to be like, what happened, and what it is like now. No one ever says what the it is. And there's a little discussion in a book by Lewis Carroll, Alice Through the Looking Glass. There's a discussion about these sentences with it, where what is the it that we're referring to? And well, in the book, someone says, well, it's usually a mouse. That's not, I don't know what the it is. What it says actually is, what were we like? And there's such a big difference. And sometimes you'll hear a talk and it's about the it, but you don't find out about the person. And it's so important to me to remember, my experience of life is not coming from the it. My experience of life is coming from me. And what one of the people that came to the podium earlier said about financial insecurity having nothing to do with money. I had a wobble for 3 or 4 weeks where I became very frightened. Earlier this year, there was a question, what do you still struggle with? Well, here's the example. I got very worried about the pipeline of jobs coming my way. And the truth is, my actual financial position was totally fine. There was no real threat there, but it felt like the wolf was at the door. And I was in a better position than I was, well, certainly 30 years ago, when I wasn't even thinking about money. There is no relationship even between my external circumstances and my internal condition. There's that wonderful, I don't know where it comes from, the story of the princess and the pea. The princess who's sleeping on a mattress and it's bumpy, so she puts mattress upon mattress upon mattress, and there are now 100 mattresses, and there's one pea stuck under the mattress, but she can't sleep, she's tossing and turning. And that is me in my life. I can have 99 things going not just well, but my way. And there is one thing which is going well, but not my way. It's not even going badly. It's just not how I want. And this is how entitled I can be. I didn't just want enough work to be coming in. I wanted to be turning down work, so I knew there was a buffer just in case. I didn't have a moment during this month of being wobbly. I didn't have a moment when I was literally idle with no work to do. But it seemed to me that I was in this amazing crisis. So this is true for me with any kind of upset. When I'm upset, I've decided to be upset at some level, and then I'm looking for the reason and the excuse, and I find something outside myself. In this case, it was the lack of pipeline orders. And now the problem is out there. It's not my job to fix it. It's everybody else's job to fix it. It's someone else's problem, but just not mine. There's a bit of me that wants to be in the limelight, and there's no better way to be in the limelight than to have a problem and to run around telling everyone about the problem. And I heard someone say, why are we so attached to the problem? And she answered her own question. She said, because you're then the hero of the dream. So you've made up the story that there's something horrific going on, and the suffering is intense and the suffering is real. But guess who the star of the show is? I am. And that is what is so attractive about suffering, is that I get to be the star of the show. Whereas when I'm getting on with things, there's a Jesuit writer who talks about the cure to loneliness is contact with reality, finding something that you're interested in and getting on with it so that you lose yourself completely in it. The answer to loneliness is not intimacy. The answer to loneliness is not making a special connection with a special person and staring into each other's eyes and sitting on the sofa and holding hands and looking over to them and shrugging your shoulder and saying, no secrets, eh? That's not the answer to loneliness. The answer to loneliness, I found, is to completely lose myself in step 12. So I'm not thinking about myself. Then there's no dream, and there's no hero of the dream, and there's no one to be upset. And that's the real freedom. So what matters is not what it used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. And it's so interesting. It says, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, not all the steps we took and the ways in which we solved our own problems. No, what happened? What happened was a program was presented to me, and I didn't make my own desperation. I found myself desperate, which means that desperation, that's why it's a gift of desperation, because you don't say, well, I'm going to construct desperation today. You suddenly find yourself desperate. My condition from 1986 through to 1993 was desperate every moment of every day, but it really took until 1993, until finally I was desperate. Everyone else had been desperate for 7 years, wondering when is he going to even start to sort himself out. But it took 7 years before I was desperate. And people have said to me, if you suddenly discover yourself desperate, do something about it now. Rush for the door. Because you don't know when the next opportunity is going to be. And someone else said how there are so many stories where the solution involves not walking away from the problem, but running away from the problem. And the person mentioned, AA is not a religious program, but this person happened to mention a couple of stories about the Israelites escaping from Egypt and doing so in a real hurry. And the second one was Lot and his wife leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, and that the injunction was don't look back, as if you look back you'll get turned into a pillar of salt. In that moment of desperation, people said, keep your eye ahead, keep your eye on the next right action. Don't look back. Don't stop to reconsider the decision as to whether you're doing the right thing by throwing yourself into the AA program. Just do it. If you stop and look back, you might not start up again. And I remember years ago, my friend Patrick, who is from Tenerife, she was in London at the time, and she got sober in AA, and she threw herself into the program like I've never seen anyone do it, still sober. Threw herself into the program, and people said to her, people outside AA, and actually some people inside AA who thought she was being a little bit extreme, they said to her, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And at 3 months, she said, I have only one egg. Pick a basket.
Yeah.
But what happened? It says, what happened? I was given the desperation. I was given the program. I just had to get my little feet moving. That's all. there's nothing that I'm taking credit for here. What happened to me was God happened to me in the response to me happening to me for a couple of decades before I got to AA. Then God happened to me. And that's what is different now. What I'm like now, I think I'm the same person I was that I walked into AA. I think I'm the same person I was when I was 7. What has changed is what I believe, what I think, and what I do, which are the garments of the soul. Those can change. So I don't need to be worried. I've never needed to be worried. I have been worried. I've never needed to be worried about what's going to happen to me if I work the program. You'll be just the same. But you'll be living differently, believing differently, thinking differently, feeling differently. You'll have a totally different experience, but you'll still be you. And the flavour will shine through. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. And again, as I said yesterday, this is one of those lines where you hear it so often, you stop hearing it. And I want to hear this line. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. This means there is a decision before the steps are even started. If you have decided. Now, a decision, I never decided to drink. What happened was the impulse to drink arose within me, and I yielded to the impulse because I had no way of not yielding to the impulse. A decision, someone said to me, is a commitment to action based on a sound analysis of the facts. And by the time you've drunk and massively overshot several thousand times, to drink again is not a commitment to action based on a sound analysis of the facts. But a decision, there was a great old AA member in London called Billy, who wrote a little thing called The Power of Powerlessness, which was wonderful. But one of the things that he said was, what makes a decision is that it is not reversed except by another decision. If you make a decision and you don't follow through, you didn't make a decision in the first place. You had a resolution. Resolutions can be broken, and usually are. New Year's resolutions. How many people make a New Year's resolution? How many people are still thinking about that resolution in July? How many people get to December the 31st saying, well, that was a resolution well fulfilled for 365 days. I've literally never heard anyone describe that. Whereas you can make a decision and stick with it. You can make a decision to get married and stick with someone through thick and through thin, for richer, for poorer, till death do us part. If your decision is otherwise, that's your business. But that's a decision. A decision is something I then keep to. And once I've made a decision, the decision-making process is over. The thinking, the judgment, the analysis, even the fact-gathering is over. I've now decided, and we move into implementation phase. If you have decided you want what we have. Now, as I said yesterday, this gets read out at pretty much every meeting. Now, if the newcomer is not well trained, when it says we, the newcomer is going to think it's the people in the room. But this was not written by the people in the room. This was written by a different bunch of people in 1939. But no one ever stops to say, well, what did those people have that we're supposed to ask ourselves, do we want this? And have I decided that I want these things? And honestly, between you and me and anyone listening to this tape in 2074, I would look around rooms and say to myself, I'm really not sure I want what these jokers have. I mean, there might be one or two who pass muster, but I mean, I can't take credit for this line, but some meetings are like the bar in Star Wars, or, and I include myself in that description. But what did these people have? There's a quotation, let's see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. End of There Is a Solution. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. Now, just imagine if you went to a meeting and the person introducing the speaker said, now, Sally or Bobby or whoever has come along to share how he or she established their relationship with God. Wouldn't that be a wonderful way to introduce every speaker? That's the topic, not getting current, or what's happened over the last week, or how much I drank. How did I establish a relationship with God? You might want to mention drink, but a meeting is not a 12-step call. So if there are loads of newcomers in the room, if the druggy buggy has bussed a couple of dozen of people in, you might want to spend the first half treating the meeting as a 12-step call. But sometimes I've gone to meetings where everyone is over a year sober, or everyone is over 10 years sober, but the dwelling is on the drinking story. I'm like, why? These people are already sold. The decision has already been made. Establishing a relationship with God. So what this means to me, if you have decided you want what we, the people of the book, have, if you have decided you want a relationship with God, then you're ready to take certain steps. So I discuss that with people. Do you want a relationship with God? Now that question only arises if the person already knows either A, they want a relationship with God, or B, they have no choice but to want a relationship with God. You don't have to want. I've never understood the willing to be willing thing. I can't get my head around it. But you don't have to want a relationship with God. In other words, you can find the idea of having a relationship with God really disagreeable, but you want it because you know you need it. It's when you get emotionally in touch with the desperate need for something to come in and stand between you and a drink, or shut the brain down because it's going to kill you before tea time. And I've often found the idea of a relationship with God unpalatable for lots of reasons, but I've wanted it at an emotional level because I know I need it, because I'm in touch with myself. And so much of recovery, we talk about willingness a lot. Are you willing? But we don't ask the question. I very rarely hear people say, not are you willing, but do you want this? Are you in touch with the emotion of wanting it? When I get up in the morning, every day I'm willing to go to work. And I tell you what the secret of that is, be self-employed. And you discover, because if I don't do the work, I'm not going to get paid. That's a really good motivator. Every morning I'm willing to go to the office. How do you know? Because I go to the office and I'm there by 6:15, 6:30 every day. That's how you test willingness, by action. Do I want to go to the office? Usually I'm not even asking myself. Often I am, occasionally I'm not. When I'm not, willing wins. Willing wins out. But if the emotion isn't there, I've had the experience where I've been willing to go to a meeting for a long time, but I haven't wanted to, and the not wanting to just grows and grows and grows until it wins. If the emotion isn't looked at and taken care of, the emotion will eventually win out. So I can override a lack of desire for AA, a lack of desire for God, a lack of desire for progress, a lack of desire for a spiritual life. I can override that with self-will for a while, but not forever. Eventually the emotion wins. So I've got to get in touch, get deep down inside and work out, make a decision. What do I really want here? Do I want a life based on God, or do I want a life where I use the tools of the program to help me get everything that I think I need and want in the world? Because that was my story in the first 7 years of AA. I wasn't a bad person, but the reason drinking had bothered me in a lot of ways was because it was getting in the way of me having a job, having a career, having money, having a relationship with someone presentable. It was getting in the way of some really major things, and I thought, now I'm sober. Once I got past the initial stages, I thought, game on. I can go and get all of the things that I need, the shopping list of things that I need to be okay, on the basis that something outside of me is going to change how I feel on the inside. And as the late great George Carlin said, trying to get satisfaction from the material world is like taping sandwiches to your legs in order to satisfy your hunger. And I tried to use the tools of the program to be successful in the outside world. And the tools of the program are very obliging. They kind of don't care why you're using them. But the results I got the material results, but I didn't get the emotional results. I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel happiness. I didn't feel secure. You don't feel secure when you're having a panic attack at 4 o'clock in the morning because you can't cope with the work stress. I got everything I wanted. Oops. Because what I want will kill me. And we'll come to that in a bit. If you want what we have, a life based on God, and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. And someone in London said a very good thing. If you want what we have, you do what we do. And one thing I've noticed with looking for sponsors, sometimes people want the personality of the sponsor, or they want the sponsor to fix them, or the sponsor has some charisma, or the sponsor has connections, or there can be 100 reasons. Someone will want the person, but not what the person is offering. And one's got to be really careful about this. But on both sides of the discussion about whether or not to sponsor someone, the answer isn't always yes, because I'm not always the right person. And if you smell something fishy, it's because there's something fishy. It's like, you know, when you take chicken from the fridge and you think to sniff it. The reason you think to sniff it is because you've already sniffed there's something wrong with it. That's why you're sniffing it. That's not the first sniff. The sniff is the second sniff. The sniff is to make sure that you were right instinctively to ask you. Because I mean, I don't think anyone in here literally sniffs everything they pull out of the fridge. So as soon as I think there's something fishy with someone asking me to sponsor them, it's because there's something fishy. And with willingness, are you willing to, not only are you willing to do what is asked, you want to do what is asked. And sometimes I'll say to people, look, this is the meeting I go to, come to it. And they come to it like the cat in Pepe Le Pew, if everyone remembers that cartoon from the 1950s, where the skunk falls in love with the cat, the black cat, which has got the white stripe down its back because of some painting accident. And Pepe is in love with the cat, and the cat is squirming trying to get away from Pepe Le Pew. And so often I've asked people have asked me to sponsor them. And I say, great, so here are the things that we're going to look at doing. And I remember once years ago, there was a situation, someone asked me to sponsor them. I said, okay, so my requirements are this, because this is what I do. If you want what we have, you do what we do. These are the things I do. I'm going to suggest you do those. And there was the huffing and the puffing and the sighing and the lining up of all the excuses in advance why this was going to be really hard. And I said, let's just forget this. If you don't want to do it, And no, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. And I should have taken the first answer, because what we had was 2 years of Pepe Le Pew and the cat. The cat did not want to be in this deal. And it just, the lack of wanting will sabotage the apparent willingness. It's a very interesting thing. And sometimes when I've stopped sponsoring someone, sometimes the sponsorship lasts just 2 weeks because we hit a roadblock and that's the end of it. And the person doesn't go to any of the meetings afterwards that I'm going to. And you didn't want the meeting, you didn't want the thing that I do. This was personal, and it shouldn't be personal. I've been sponsored by a few people. I've had the same sponsor for 16 years now. Long may it continue, God willing. But the sponsors I've had have been very, very different personalities. But there's a line or an idea all of them have used, which is business is business in sponsorship. We've got some business to transact, and it's a very close relationship. I'm told that the relationship between a patient and her gynecologist is close as well, but it's close in a very, very specific way. You know, it doesn't mean you're going to share a calzone together, but one person knows considerably more about the other. It's not a symmetrical relationship. The sponsor may disclose certain things, but not everything. Because when I remember I asked Brian, who was my sponsor many years ago, I said, hey, can we meet for a coffee? Just, like to meet for a coffee and have a nice coffee. And he leaned in and said, you know we're not friends, don't you? She was chilling. There's a job to do. So if you want what we have, not if you want us, the sponsor is not the meal. The sponsor dishes out the meal. The sponsor, or no, better than that. The sponsor gives you the recipe and stands over you while you make the meal yourself. If they want you because of you, run out of the room as quickly as you can. The other thing, while we're on the topic, there's a particular phenomenon where someone will come to you for sponsorship and say, you're the only one who understands. You're the only one that can help me. I just really connect with you. And now, that may be, you may really connect with the person. I've said this as well to people. I've said to people, I really connect with you. But that's not necessarily a good basis for sponsorship. That's a good basis for really listening carefully to the person in meetings. It's not necessarily a good basis for sponsorship. I'll tell you why. My deal was this before I even started to get well. Every person I would go to for help, I would list all of the other people who have failed me. All of the other approaches that have failed me, but you're going to be able to help me. I'd selected the next person to be added to the list of people who would fail me. And there's an Israeli psychiatrist who writes about this in clinical practice and says, if someone comes to you with a terrible tale of woe about how they've been failed by every previous clinician or psychotherapist or psychiatrist or whatever, but they know that you're different, he said, throw them out of your office. Go and find someone ordinary. And in some groups in London, if you want to sponsor, you put your hand up and you're going to get a signed one. Now, I don't necessarily think that wouldn't work for me, because I need a little bit of a connection. But I understand it, because it's about the content which is being offered. It's not about specialness. Some of us have tried to, I've skipped a little bit, some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. And this is the great challenge that I'm faced with in AA. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas until the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Now, some of the old ideas might be correct, but from the point of view of me, I'm not the one that's able to judge which of the old ideas are the deadly ones and which ones are okay. And this is why I have to let go of all of them. And how are you going to get through the day if you let go of all of your old ideas? It's very frightening. It's saying, turn the light off. You're going to have to be in the dark and listen to the voice, which will tell you exactly what to do. I don't know if you've ever had problems with a satellite navigation system where it misidentifies where you are, but it's really confident you are where it thinks you are, and it's giving you directions, and it's just nuts. That's me directing myself. And a good image for how this works in AA is, imagine your satellite navigation system goes down in that way. It has no idea where you really are, but you've got someone next to you who knows their way around town, and you can't follow the map anymore. And you have to say to the person next to you, you're just going to have to tell me next left, next right, carry on over the junction, turn right. And you want to know what the map is. You want to know where you're going. And the person says, if I tried to explain, you wouldn't understand. It's too much to take on board. Just follow the instructions, one tiny step at a time. Now, it starts off being the sponsor, I think inevitably in the first year. I couldn't navigate even ordinary situations. I would go to the grocery store and have a panic attack because I just couldn't cope with the range of produce there. I don't know why it was giving me a panic attack, but it did. I couldn't navigate ordinary situations. I needed to learn everything from scratch because I'd been kind of busy for a few years while other folks were learning stuff. I'd been trapped in my own little head, trying to get the money to get drinking and recovering from drinking. I'd missed a lot. I was a 12-year-old in a 21-year-old's body and a 21-year-old's life. I needed to blind myself to everything I thought I knew. Now, over time, as one acquires the program, there's what I like to call the 4 Ps. If I can't navigate by the thought that I've just had or the feeling that I've just had, which was how I navigated. How do I feel? Take an action. How do I feel? Take an action. I just did what I felt like doing. That had to go, because sometimes I felt like drinking and that's why I was drinking. Why? Because I felt like drinking. That's why my life and will needed to be turned over to a power greater than myself, because as Grady O.H. says, which is my favourite AA speaker, no offence, but she says, you want to turn your will and life over to God because God isn't thirsty. So God's not going to get you to take a drink on his behalf. It's never going to be God's will for me to drink or sniff or snort an outside issue. The flimsy reed that turns out to be the hand of God starts out with the sponsor's barked instructions. That's what the flimsy reed looks like. So some jerk is giving you instructions which seem crazy, but he's sober longer than you, and he's holding down a job, and he's still married. But over time, the 4 Ps. What are the 4 things? The 4 Ps. The first one is the program of 12 steps. The addenda to which are the 12 traditions and the 12 concepts, and that's going to give you a lot already. The 12 steps sort me out. The 12 traditions sort out my relationship with other people. the 12 concepts sort out how me and you get stuff done together. If we need to get some work done, division of duties, responsibilities, accountability, how to work out who gets to do what, reporting back. In some meetings I've heard people talk about this, and sometimes they have these cute little charts which say each step has got a principle associated with it. And it's very well meaning, it's cute. It is cute. But you're selling yourself short because step 12 has got literally hundreds of principles. Now, it's going to say, here are the steps we took, which is suggested as a program of recovery, and it's got a couple of hundred words. But in the forwards, do we have the forward to that third edition here? It says the 12 steps that summarize the program. Oh, so the 12 steps on page 59, the 200 words, the 12 steps on the scrolls, that's not the program. That's the summary of the program. What's the program? And now this third edition, $5.95 from Gardener's Books. This third edition, rarer than hen's teeth now, originally had a paper flyleaf, I think they're called flyleaves, a paper cover. And on the inside of the cover, it talked about the contents of the big book up to page 164. It said, this is the AA program. The program is the whole thing. So step 12 starts on page 89 and therefore runs to the end of 164. You count the principles in there, there are hundreds. So there's the program and the principles. Then there is the people. Where do the people come in? We are people who normally would not mix. And when you meet us, it's pretty clear why. It's amazing. We don't mix well with others, we don't mix well with ourselves. But the great benefit of AA is we're so selfish that we're not emotionally involved in other people's problems. Because we're so concerned with our own. Which means that we'll have a degree of objectivity about other people's lives, unless we're untreated Al-Anons is a program for that. Which is why the people that I want to seek advice from in AA, I'm best off seeking advice from good old-fashioned selfish alcoholics who really care mostly about themselves. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I don't want someone with the sad little eyes who every time I feel something, they feel something, because they're going to be useless to me, because they're going to so identify that that identification will distort what's coming down the tubes. So I can run stuff past people that have significant unsolved problems in their lives, but those problems happen to be in slightly different areas than mine. And I will get an objective read on my situation from those people, and I'll be able to return the favour. So there is the people. But there's one danger with that I've learned over the years. And I'm sorry, I was going to be going through the steps this weekend, but this is what's coming to me to share, so whatever. Now, I'm going to talk about sponsor hoppers and advice shoppers. I've been a great one for taking my little shopping cart round to different people, trying to fill it up with advice, so that I can get all the advice, I can get it home, I can unpack it, I can lay it out in front of me, and then I will decide. I'm going to have the final right of decision on which bit of advice I think is right. If I'm doing that, I'm not following advice. So what I've learned to do is pick the right person and go with, if I really need advice, pick a good person and go with it and try it out. As Tom W. says, the worst it can be is a terrible mistake. And it's like the experiment with having a drink. It may be worth a bad case of the jitters. So sometimes I've followed advice and it's been wrong and I've got a bad case of the jitters and I haven't gone to that person again. But I think I'm right in saying I've never taken the advice of anyone in recovery and done irreparable harm. Now I know people who have, so one does have to be careful, but it's a little bit rare in my experience, as long as you're choosing a decent person. So I don't shop around for advice or try to get a quorum anymore or try to get a majority. Pick one person and go for it. And it's the same with sponsor hoppers. The danger is that the most danger I'm ever in is the moment that I'm choosing the sponsor or choosing the person to ask me to sponsor them. That's the thing I need to be careful about. Hopping from sponsor to sponsor, there's a big risk that I'm looking for someone who will co-sign my narrative. I would, in my first 7 or 8 years, was always trying to find someone who would help me be successful in what I called my career, rather grandly. I wasn't interested in the program. I met a bloke called Peter the Organist. He was called Peter the Organist because he was an organist. We're very unimaginative in our nicknames. I mean, especially the nickname Angry John? Like, make some effort here. Peter the Organist was really peaceful, and I interviewed him to be a potential sponsor, and I did a little bit of an audit job, and everything checked out, but he gave me the creeps because he was peaceful. I did not want what he had. I wanted him to supply me with what I thought I needed, and that's totally different. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. Now, you might already be down with this, but I think it can't be stated enough. What is meant by suggestion? And I'm not going to say that the parachute story, it's a good way of expressing it, but I want to look at this a little more. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. I've heard people very often over the years expressing immense gratitude. Now, there are lots and lots of things to be grateful for, which is why expressing gratitude for this particular thing is so odd. Expressing gratitude for the fact that the program is merely suggested, because I'm a rebellious alcoholic and I don't like being told what to do. It's not a huge privilege to have the option not to do the steps. That's not a great luxury. And that's not something that works in my favour. Oh, I could not work the program today. What a boon. And the irony is that alcohol dragged me round by the nose for years. And I've had addictions in a few other little areas. I found the AA program has worked just fine on those. Whether you deal with them in step 1 or step 6 and 7 doesn't, to me, make much difference. The steps will get you one way or another at some point. So it doesn't matter where it gets dealt with, because it'll get dealt with. So with these addictions, I remember a chap in London called Harry said, my head wouldn't let my feet rest, which was just brilliant. Alcohol dragged me around by the nose. Other addictions dragged me around by the nose for years. And then I come into AA and say, I don't like being told what to do. Apparently I don't mind so much. Because I didn't mind alcohol telling me what to do. I didn't mind my head telling me what to do. You see, the thoughts that come into this is a thing about thinking. Okay, so I'll come back to the suggestions thing in a moment. Have you noticed how often in the book it says, the thought crossed my mind, the thought crossed his mind? Now, I don't have a thought as I might, for instance, make my bed or make an omelette. I don't say, like with an omelette, like I'm going to make an omelette, and then I do certain actions and then I have an omelette. I don't say, I'm going to have a thought, and then make the thought, and then I have the thought that I made. The thought has a mind of its own. It is the one that occurs to me. I am the recipient of the thought. If I'm the recipient of the thought, where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from the physical brain, maybe. Or it's coming from God, directly into my mind. Or it's coming from the ego, aka the devil, aka the self, aka the disease. People use different words to describe the phenomenon of this entity inside you, which operates like a parasite, which you're so identified with, you think it's your own. So the ego, the devil, the self, the addiction, the disease, the alcoholism, shoots up a thought into my mind, and then I think I've thought something. I haven't thought something. The thought has thought itself at me, but it's come to me in my voice. I thought, well, I think this. No, I don't. My brain has given me a sentence, and then I've identified with it. Now, I spent my whole life operating based on the thoughts that crossed my mind. And then I said, I don't like being told what to do. I've been being told what to do my whole life, programmed by my own brain, thinking that I'm an independent person. Because I was so identified with the hostage taker, with the parasite, that I thought I was in charge. I was its glove puppet. There is no freedom there. Freedom comes only when there's a choice between two or more options. The ego always asks first, always answers first. When I ask a question, what am I going to do? Or what's going on here? Why did he say that? The ego always answers first. And what AA does is it gives me a program to be patient, to listen for the second voice underneath, which is the voice of God. Sometimes the voice of God is the seventh voice because the ego has got more than one thing to say. So it's not even the second, it's the second thought, it's definitely from God. Bill C says, you've got to trust your gut. True, God's unadulterated truth, gut, but your head does a really good impression of your gut. I just know it's God's will. Oh, do you? Very good. How many books of theology have you written? What theology is that actually consistent with? The prophets weren't always right or weren't always sure. The prophets got things wrong sometimes and made really big mistakes, I'm told, reliably, by my rabbinical friends, of whom I've had some. So, I don't like being pushed around because I'm a rebellious alcoholic. It's like, no, I'm a selfish alcoholic, so ha ha ha. People talk about that sometimes like it's a badge of honour. And I've done that, and I was told you should be a little bit more embarrassed about your rebellious streak and your selfishness. It's not something to swing around like some great virtue. It's something you need to get over because it's childish. And I remember saying to my other half, who's in a very prominent position, I have some work I do, but basically I just type things and some money comes into my bank account. My other half is genuinely important. It's very prominent and in his own field, in his own part of whatever. And I asked him once how he deals with people resenting him and expressing their resentment towards him in a public domain. He said, first of all, I'm embarrassed for them because it's so childish. Secondly, they need to get over it because it gets in the way. And so lots of these so-called alcoholic traits I've learned to be embarrassed about and learned to take the steps necessary to get over them. So, as I say, it's not a great virtue, it's not a great boon for this to be a suggestion. One of the big mistakes is to treat the program, the 12 steps, as like a special thing for the advanced people. Like, imagine going on a train from London to Edinburgh, and there's a special dining cart where they have this amazing menu and silver service and Michelin-starred chef and everything. But you can just sit in a regular carriage in your seat with your sausage in a box, and you'll get to Edinburgh just the same. And someone comes in and says, we suggest you go to the dining cart. And you know, I'm fine here. This is all right. I can't afford the dining car. That's not what it means when it says suggestion here. This is the railway guard saying the train for Edinburgh is going to leave in a couple of minutes. If you want to go to Edinburgh, you're going to need to get on this train. I suggest you get on the train, sir. When someone says sir to you, sir, you know you've done something wrong, but they're being a little bit ginger about how they're telling, sir. It's not really politeness. There's an urgency. We suggest you get on the train. So if you want to go to Edinburgh, we suggest you get on the train. What is Edinburgh? Sobriety, life. So there is a politeness there. There really is a little bit of politeness there, because the person doing the suggestion is not in any position to force me or compel me. The desire must come from within. And I'll tell a little story, then I'll stop. And I'll do questions this afternoon. And apologies to those of you who've heard this before. I was in the French city of Montpellier a few years ago, lovely French city in the south of France, and it was very late for lunch. So in France, things shut down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you haven't had your lunch by then, you can whistle for it, because they just stop and then they open up again around 6 or 7. And we realised we'd left it very late, and we got on the TripAdvisor and said, okay, list all the restaurants in Montpellier, starting with the best at the top. And we realised the best restaurant in Montpellier, out of 900 eating establishments, the best one was a couple of blocks away from where we were. And we ran to it. It was about 10 to 3. And it was a little hole-in-the-wall restaurant with a man with crooked teeth, man with crooked teeth. I'm mostly French, so I can say that about the French. Man with crooked teeth, who was the chef and the server and was doing the dishes. And there was a chalkboard where it was a chalkboard which was from wholesale, which said in fancy writing at the top, the chef suggests And then there were 3 dishes: starter, main course, dessert, which he'd written on in chalk. And one of our party rather stupidly said, "Yeah, is there anything else apart from that?" He said, "No." So we suggest this as a program of recovery. Is there anything else on offer? No. You're very welcome to sit here doing nothing, sitting on your behind, and we're going to love you. But we have nothing else to offer. The meal is the program. The fellowship is the crock pot. I've tried to eat the crock pot and get the results of eating the stew. And that won't work. You'll break your teeth. It didn't work. You're eating the wrong bit. And I'm going to stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right. We'll now have a break until 1:55, 2 p.m. Please help me close with the Lord's Prayer, and we'll remain where we're sitting or standing. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
and can I please ask the Zoom host to stop recording?